Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry to catch you in the middle of writing again.
That's okay.
Welcome back to another episode of Under the Sun and Moon podcast with Kes and Michelle. I am Kes.
And I am Michelle. Okay.
Excuse me. So,
here we are. Yep.
Last episode, we talked about physical health a lot.
Yes, we did. We talked extensively about the frustration of trying to pursue physical health, fighting for your own health care. We could probably talk about that every single week.
We could probably write a few books about it.
I actually have a book in the works.
On
that topic.
Yeah. But this time, we're talking about mental health.
Mental health.
The mind, the brain, how it does and does not work.
Yeah.
I would like to start off by asking you, not necessarily like your history with mental health, but very specifically, because I have an answer to this. When you were a kid, how often was mental health discussed in your house?
When I was a kid, like how old do you mean by kid?
Like above 8. Let's go there.
Okay,
above the age of 8.
And when you say discussed,
like,
because the conversation changes as time moves on. So, below 8 is the 1970s, and even, we're moving into the early 80s. And I still live in an extraordinarily small town.
The same town, in fact. Well, almost.
I don't live in the same town right now, but I live in the next town south. I live in a smaller town than the one I grew up in. So, the conversations in those decades regarding mental health were not mental health. They were, this person is special. This person is touched.
Gotcha.
Which literally meant touched by God.
Sure.
This person is crazy.
Yep.
The phrase that I hate.
Yeah. Or this person is what is super not PC anymore is the R word. Was that really?
No, we never used that word.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God, I heard that so often when I was in school, like when I was 8 years old.
I guess we used it on occasion, but, and that's not related to mental health. That's actually developmental.
I know, but
brain condition. So no. I mean, it was used by kids.
Right. That's what
it's a popular kids phrase, but the town I grew up in had a large chain, basically, which of homes, group homes for developmentally delayed adults. It was called the Hillside House of Queens, and it was started by a doctor who lived in my neighborhood just one block over because he had a child who was born with developmental delays. In those days, they were called disabilities.
Sure.
It's not really a phrase that's used that often anymore.
I feel like it is, at least from where.
But anyway, so there were probably at least a couple hundred people living in town in these group homes that was started by this man from our neighborhood, and we saw they were just a part of our lives. We saw people from the Hillside House at the grocery store and the pharmacy, and when the fire company had a dinner or some kind of an event, they would bring everyone, and we would set up tables for them and serve them food, and we would hang out on the porches of the houses that they lived in, and we talked to them, the ones that could, verbally communicate. It was just a normal part of life.
Right.
So, I would have to say that the people in my generation who grew up in Queens and Ravenna probably have a more highly developed and sensitive perspective on developmentally delayed adults than others.
Gotcha.
But we never mixed up developmentally delayed adults with people who had mental illness, although you can be developmentally delayed and have mental illness. So the conversation when I was a kid at home was usually pretty negative.
Okay.
Was seen as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of problems as a teenager. By the time I was 12, I realized that I was what people called depressed.
Yep.
And I had been depressed for probably 3 or 4 years since I was a kid.
Sure.
And quote unquote sending me away to live somewhere else was a constant threat that was imposed on me by my father.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
From the things you've said about him, that doesn't really surprise me.
No. Mm-mm.
The reason that I asked that question is because I self-identify as being mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the positive enforcement of mental health that you and Dad gave me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I remember, God, I don't think I realized it when I was younger, but I feel like I've been having panic attacks my entire life.
Well, you don't really self-identify as being mentally ill. You've
Well,
actually been diagnosed.
Yeah. But, crap, I lost my train of thought. So.
Sorry, that was probably my fault.
No, it's okay. It's just, like, I am mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the positive impact that you and Dad have had on my mental health, it's made me feel comfortable as telling people that I'm mentally ill.
Right.
So, I feel like I've been having panic attacks my entire life. That's where I left off. They haven't necessarily always been the same since I've gotten older and been in different situations and everything.
No, because you learn the skills that you need to identify it to begin with, because that's what can make one go on for so long, and then to deal with it.
Yeah, because, like, it's really interesting, at least in my perspective, because I have been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and clinical depression.
Right.
I was medicated for 4 years, I think.
No.
Because I remember first taking Zoloft when I was 13. And then I was weaned off it when I was 17. Like, just as I turned 17. Or has it been...
I feel like there was a gap in between.
No.
Okay, then I guess it was 4 years.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. But I think, especially as of recently, and I mean recently as in, like, the past, well, honestly, 2 years, I've started to understand more and more of my own mental health just as much as I've come to understand the people around me's mental health as well.
Yeah.
And that's partially because of, like, exposure to social media and things like that. Like, I follow a ton of therapists and mental health advocates on TikTok, which I feel like I always come back around to at some point every episode. Is that TikTok is a really good place for me to find like-minded people in that sense.
But not necessarily to get a mental health education.
No.
Highlights, yes, but if you see something that's interesting, definitely go deeper.
Sure. Like, a lot of the therapists and mental health advocates on TikTok, they don't necessarily, like, try and diagnose you with anything.
Well, they shouldn't be, but...
Right. But they do say, like, hey, here's some tips and tricks if you feel a panic attack coming on, which I find very helpful because there's some that I have tried and have found to be a little useful.
Yeah.
There is one person on there who gives the signs of what might be a said thing. Like, he actually does a lot of videos surrounding ADHD, especially in adults, because I've come to learn that it's actually a little difficult for adults to be diagnosed with ADHD.
Extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I actually know an adult who believes that they have ADHD, but they only came to that realization because they worked with kids with ADHD.
Yeah.
And they saw the behaviors in themselves. So, but it's a challenge.
Yeah. And I'll be 100% honest with you. The past month, I've been pretty convinced that I also have ADHD.
No, but okay.
That's the reason I didn't want to tell you, because I knew you would say no.
Well, not, yeah, okay. I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just because of, like, not only the things that he has said, but because he, like, points out some of the traits that many people with ADHD share. I've been like, oh, well, that I can relate to that. And then I look it up, and then I've done my research and stuff on, like, the common traits of ADHD, and I'm like, oh, I have a ton of these. What do I do now? So, like, that's the reason that I say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even talked to my husband about it, and I'm like, just out of curiosity. Like, I would talk to him about the things that I read, and I would talk to him about the things that I've looked up about ADHD, and he's like, do you think I have this? And he's like, oh, yeah,
I love it.
Not in a negative way, like, not to be a jerk.
No, I know that.
But he's just like, yeah, I've seen you do said and such things. And I'm like, interesting. So, like, excuse me. I feel like I am really open about mental health in general. Mm-hmm. Like, if I'm having an anxiety attack on the spot, I will tell you.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I went to, at least I tend to accidentally, like, bump into people that also are pretty open about mental health and stuff, and then I end up becoming friends with them. But I feel like when I was in particular, my second high school, that was probably the worst place, one of the worst places for my mental health.
It was a terrible school.
Yeah. And so when I went to college and I started talking to other people, and they're like, oh yeah, I have panic attacks too. Or yeah, I've been, like, seeing a therapist for such and such years. And I'm like, oh my God, it's not weird. But I had you and Dad, like, giving me the positive reinforcement to be open about my diagnoses and mental health and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was really difficult for me as a kid to find people who were also going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I knew a lot of people, like, they had some ability. I don't know what it was, but I knew people who would have panic attacks but knew how to hide them. I can't hide mine. I'm waiting for you to say something. You have that look on your face.
I'm trying to question if hiding it is really an effective way of dealing with it.
Right.
You know, when you were a teenager, we lived in the Cincinnati area in the Midwest, and I found the Midwest to have an extensive amount of resources, especially Cincinnati, for child health and teen health and mental health. I mean, every opportunity that someone with a physical or mental issue was probably available in the Cincinnati area. Yet I found the community in general to not be very open to anyone who was different in any way, shape, or form. Which of course meant that a lot of teenagers in at least your first high school were trying to do anything to make themselves different or stand out, because it's just not really accepted in the Midwest. It's a very fit into the mold,
like,
and be quote unquote normal sort of region of the country.
I went to
not just Cincinnati, but Columbus and Indianapolis.
Right,
and even down into Louisville. It's like that. Yeah.
But, like, those three states, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, were pretty not great with it, I don't think. But
conformity was really important.
Yeah. And I went to high school, my first high school, with a lot of people who got into tons of trouble. Like, even a lot of them had problems with the law, with drugs, with things like that, and later on got diagnosed with such and such mental illness. And I was like, yeah. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not saying that that was like the commonality. I just noticed that that's what a lot of people that I went to high school did. Well, because they didn't know how to handle what they were going through.
They were also struggling to get the attention that they needed so that the problem could get recognized and hopefully get some kind of treatment.
Right.
Now your second high school that you went to, we moved out into the country. Love the house.
Oh, the house is great.
Love the area.
We've talked about like picking it up and bringing it here.
Yeah, if I could just move that house, it would be perfect with the barn and everything. But what happened there was if someone acted out or was unique in any way,
right,
they were separated. And so you had two groups in the school. You had the ones that followed the rules and went to the church in the community.
Yes.
And then you had the ones that didn't. And they were actually separated into a separate room.
I was in that separate room for a long time.
Yes, you were.
Because there was...
because you made eye contact with a teacher.
Oh, God. My freaking math teacher.
Yeah. I don't know how to deal with her. When she speaks to me, she makes eye contact.
Yeah, I'm being direct. What do you want from me? That freaked her out, and I couldn't understand why, because I was talking to her. I looked her in the face, and I would talk to her, and she got really unnerved by it.
And what's interesting is that's really the place where we were living in and where you happened to be going to school at the time, although most of it was online ultimately because of the separation that they were trying to create.
I was going to say that
you really came into your own, really became comfortable with being aware of yourself, the issues that you had.
Yeah.
You on your own were like, I think I need a break from counseling. I think this is the right time.
Yeah.
You on your own said... with your doctor,
sure,
I'd like to get weaned off of the antidepressant. I'd just like to. First, it was a step down,
right, and then
then you were like, okay, that really wasn't that bad. I think I'm ready to take the next step.
Because I was on a stupid high dose. I remember that. At least for somebody my age, I was on a really high dose.
There was a lot of room to move upward, but
yeah, but still, they were really concerned about how much I was taking.
But part of that, I think part of the way that you reached that state was because in that particular spot, in that location, your father and I were really fighting for you.
Yeah.
And basically said, if she's just going to be in a room on a computer, she can just do this from home.
Sure.
And they did offer that. And ultimately, they offered it to get you out of the building.
Yeah, they not like having me there.
They did not want you there, and they did not want to talk to your father.
No.
Well, he actually was banned from the campus.
Yeah, because a teacher sent me into a panic attack.
And he went to have a very direct conversation with this teacher, and he didn't like that your father spoke to him directly like that and didn't defer to him as an authority figure,
or call him Mr. He called him by his first name, and that really bugged the shit out of him. And I was like, I don't care. This teacher told me that he didn't care what I was going through. And I was like, all right, so you suck.
And so you were home in a comfortable spot.
Yeah.
And we were able at that time to not just have a house, but to have a house surrounded by farmland. There were no immediate neighbors.
Yep. And then
you drove a 20-year-old pickup truck.
I also, with the help of Dad, he helped me get into equine therapy. Because I was like, I don't like having nothing. I want to be able to
He was the one that sought it out and thought, this will be a really good thing.
Yeah, because
And it ended up being a very good thing.
Yeah, I almost went to college for it. But I remember that period of time where I felt like I could figure out who I was a little bit more was super difficult because I literally had to be kicked into the dirt and then figure it out just between you, me, and Dad.
But you had the time and the space to do that.
Yeah, and
not everybody gets that opportunity.
No, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
And I know people that don't and didn't have that opportunity. But yeah, I remember I went to a jumpstart program with my alma mater. It's like a month of just like summer college, really. That's what they call it.
4 or 5. I guess it was 5 weeks.
Yeah,
because we were there the whole month of July.
And then I came back on August 3rd.
Yep. Yeah, so it was about 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And then I remember I probably had a panic attack for 2 weeks straight. Because I was just...
9 days.
9 days?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was off the wall. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was like, I'm scared. I don't feel safe. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And
your father was ready to come and get you.
He was ready to come and get me, and then you said, give it, like a week or something?
I knew you needed to be there at least a week.
Yeah.
And I was calling behind the scenes and accessing every resource on campus that I could.
Oh, were you?
Health services, every counselor in the program, we were on a first-name basis.
Oh my God, I didn't know.
Yep.
God.
Yeah. And
Mom's a secret agent.
And I just knew that it was just because it was different and you were away from home and you had been at home a lot, you know, and doing school from home. I
went from homeschooling to living in a different state.
Yeah, 14 hours away.
Yeah.
Yep. And but I just knew that you just needed to get over that rough patch. We knew you were in the right place. We knew it was the right college for you.
Yeah, I did too,
yeah,
but
everyone was friendly, aware of what was going on. Every time I talked to them on the phone, campus services, like campus safety, everybody knew.
Mhm. Yeah.
You were on a watch list, but not a bad one.
I know.
And then so that was day 9.
Yeah.
Was the last time that you called, like, in a total panic.
Yeah.
Day 10, I think we got 1 phone call from you, and it was not bad.
No, but...
And then day 11, I was like, either she's dropped off the face of the earth, or
yeah,
things have finally settled in.
Yeah, because you...
And your dad was like, should we call her? And I'm like, no, we'll give her another day. No one's contacted us and told us she's missing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so day 12, I called you to try to talk to you. Your father and I were standing on the phone together on speakerphone in the living room of the farmhouse.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, okay. Yeah, love you too. Yeah, I gotta go. We're going to do this thing. And I hung up the phone and your dad was like, oh my gosh, I'll never forget it. That's it? Wait, I go, yeah, that's it.
Because you told me, you told me when I came back, you're like, the less you called, the better you were feeling. Mm-hmm. The more better you were feeling.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, because I didn't have a reason to panic anymore. Mm-hmm. I had settled into my element. Yeah, I changed my major during that time because I had settled so much.
Mm-hmm. You were with Aiden and, it's not just like a jumpstart program you were doing. What were you doing? You were doing public speaking or English?
I was doing public speaking. That was my class.
Yeah,
it was effective speaking.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because it was...
And it should have been your class.
The professor...
Because the number of times I've stood in front of groups speaking, groups of 5, groups of 500.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you were with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you damn well should have aced that class.
And I did.
Yeah.
Because even the professor that taught that class, I had on my capstone team. Because I was like, I need you. Because... excuse me, I had such a difficult time with, I took another class called Intro to Psychology.
Yes.
And the professor decided to make me a topic of conversation.
Okay.
Because I was open about my mental illnesses, I would talk about it during class because... Like, it's an intro to psychology class. I think I know a little bit if I'm dealing with it every damn day.
It's called in vivo experience.
Right. And so he would use me as an example, and I was like, ugh, I don't like being called out like this. This was a mistake. But, and then there were a few other classes. There were 2 other classes I was taking that were just exhausting.
But my point is, in addition to actually taking classes, you were You had picnics. You went places, right?
There were
trips.
You went to the mall. I went to the mall. We went to Old Forge. We went to the water park up there.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. I met my husband during summer college too.
Mm-hmm.
This poor guy. His first impression of me was me sitting in the hallway hyperventilating. He'll tell you about it too. But
oh, that's a sweet memory.
I know, yeah, that's ouch. But we went to the lake almost all the time.
Right.
The
college is on a lake.
Yeah.
Right.
It's literally down the street from Cazenovia Lake.
Yeah.
At Cazenovia College.
Yeah. Like the most picturesque community.
Looks like something out of a Hallmark movie.
It's like Stars Hollow.
Yeah, kinda. Any of you Gilmore Girl fans out there? But yeah, I remember, because during the summer college program, they had tutors. Not necessarily designated to a specific class.
But they had all been through it.
Yeah, they had all been to summer college. Well, most of them had. And a lot of them worked for this one part of the college called Project Reach, which was strictly for peer mentoring and tutoring.
Mm-hmm.
So this one hero of a tutor, Angelo, I will say his name, I was having such a horrible time.
He was so great.
Yeah. It was 4th of July. I think that was the first time that I had talked to him. And he was like, I was sitting on a bench, like, trying to chill myself out because I was having a panic attack. He was like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, no. I was just having a moment. So he sits down next to me and he's like, do you want to call your mom? And I'm like, yeah. So we called you.
Uh-huh.
And he was
I remember this conversation.
Yeah, he was talking to you and everything, and I was like, he was telling me about like his panic attacks and stuff like that, and just how he would handle some of the things he was going through.
He did really well.
I was like,
I hope he's doing well right now, because
I hope he is too. Yeah.
The guy's got some excellent communication skills. And he was able to get you calmed down and refocused, and yeah.
Even up until I graduated, he and I would still like bump into each other in the hallways and still just chat, ask how we're doing and stuff like that. He's fantastic, and I love him. But yeah, like, I remember getting to Kaz, and I was like, I remember being able to talk to people about, like, what I was experiencing, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, I've been through that, too. And I'm like, oh, my God.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Especially this one person that used to work in the Office of Admissions, who I did photos for later on. She was kind of my go-to person for a while. She was fantastic. And when she went to a different job and she left Kaz, I was like, no. You helped me through everything, and I need you to help me through more. But she was really great when I was panicking. When you guys moved me in and dropped me off and I started, like, sobbing on the spot, she was the first person to come over and be like, hey, you okay? And I'm like, no, I feel horrible.
You and your father were simultaneously crying. It's just that he was crying as we were driving away.
Yeah, and I was
crying. You were crying there on campus.
I was like, no, take me with you. And then
fast forward about 3 weeks later, because your grandfather passed away. And your dad and I turned around for an emergency trip back to upstate New York for his his funeral, services. Yeah. And on the way, we drove through Cazenovia just to check on you and see you.
I remember this.
And you were sitting at a desk or on a desk with a bunch of the counselors, not with other students.
I made friends with almost all the RAs.
And it was normal for you. You always hung out with kids about a year or two older than you. You never really hung out with kids the same age as you.
Right.
And so you're sitting there with these people who are sophomores and juniors and having Chinese food, which when you ate Chinese food with us, the only thing you ever ate was white rice with butter on it.
Yeah, because it was good.
And I was watching you eat things you had never eaten before. So you were experimenting with different foods, you were laughing and joking, and we were trying to talk to you, and you were just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to be rude.
No, I know. And I was trying to pull your dad away. I think he wanted to spend more time with you, but we,
Sure.
you know, we really had something that we absolutely needed to get to.
Right. That wasn't the same day, was it?
No, it was the next day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Poppy had died the day before. But you were just doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you were totally in your element, and it was good because it made him feel so much better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This time when we drove away, he wasn't a wreck.
Cool.
You know.
That was good.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. But yeah, I remember that was really funny because after I came back from summer college, I realized how much of a transition I had made to being like in a total panic to being human again.
Well, it's all part of the human experience, but
yeah,
some of it isn't necessarily experiences that any of us want to have.
Speaking of which,
unfortunately, our brains do that anyway.
Right. So, summer college was not a traumatic event. It wasn't.
Right, no.
But I want to ask about how your mental health has changed, or like really just how your mental health has changed since Dad has passed away, because that is a traumatic event.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how it's affected me. God, do I know how it's affected me.
Right.
But what have you noticed that's different with you since then? Because you're not really a huge, I've said this before, you're not really like a total emotion mind person.
No.
You, like I explain it to people when I talk about my parents. I'm like, my dad was more emotion mind, my mom was logic mind. They made the scale of the mindfulness scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why I asked.
We were complementary to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to look inside and analyze oneself.
Sure.
I'm definitely still recovering.
Yeah, but is there a recovery? Sorry, I don't mean to bring that up, but like
yeah, no, there is. I mean, a year ago I was still struggling to function on a daily basis.
Sure.
And I don't really feel that anymore. Of course, if anyone's listened to our last podcast, I've had a dramatic health change.
Yes, you
because
have.
of the tiniest pill I've ever seen in the world.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me a great deal.
Yeah.
So there is that. But even without the pill, I'm just doing better. Now I'm in just the thing with grief is that it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It takes so much energy. It's from your life.
Yeah, it's not. Would you? It's not. I'm gonna start it with it's not. But would you classify grief not as a mental illness, but a subject of?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't, and I don't want to do that
because
it's
I don't
a normal
either.
Function of life.
Yeah, I don't either, but I know.
But you
some
can
people
have
do.
persistent grief.
Yes.
Which is a totally different thing.
Right.
I can't even think of the phrase right now, but there's a term for someone that just is constantly stuck in grief and they can't pull themselves out of it.
I wish there was some way we could look it
If
up.
only there was a magical network, almost like a web of information, and it was worldwide. Oh my gosh, a worldwide web. Why hasn't someone thought of that?
Complicated grief.
Complicated grief, yes.
People also say persistent complex bereavement disorder.
Yeah, well, those are all good words to apply. So that has been, it's a constant challenge, but it's not a constant challenge on an everyday basis.
Right.
For the most part.
Okay.
I think it depends upon the time of the year.
Yes, because
not because of the seasons, but because of where he was with his condition.
You said it, I don't know if it was here or if it was outside of this, but you said that there are particular months in particular that are the hardest, and usually they just happen to fall during the spring and the summer.
Well, that's because that's when his condition got the worst, and he got his diagnosis, and we realized that he was actually terminal. And then once he got the actual diagnosis, and he knew I suspected he was dying for some time.
You said that like back in March
I suspected
or something.
in March that he was not going to live until the end of summer.
Yeah.
I can't tell you why, what the brain processes or what the brain knows.
No,
but some areas that it doesn't know in others. But he was diagnosed at the end of May, and it's a terminal condition, frontotemporal dementia with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is also shortened into FTD, ALS. And the diseases are related. It's not two different diagnoses. It's all one.
Or some people also know ALS as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Right, Lou Gehrig's disease. Some people know frontotemporal dementia as Pick's disease, although it's not really referred to that anymore. Not exactly. That's a whole other conversation. It was in those months. And once he got that diagnosis, because he was aware of what was going on, he could not understand everything that people said to him, but he could pick up about maybe 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
And especially if he was looking directly at you and he could read your body language, because he lost language as part of his condition. That was the primary progressive aphasia part of it.
But
he knew what was going on, and he knew he was terminal. And once that acceptance came to him, not that he accepted dying.
No.
He fought it right till the very, very last hour of his life.
Right.
But just that he accepted that this was going to take his life.
Yeah.
He changed, and he went downhill
very
extraordinarily quickly.
Not necessarily in a sense that he gave up, kind of.
No, but once we realized what the symptoms were, things just sort of collapsed. And there was also a combination of other things going on. Like in March, I realized, that was when I looked at him and I said, "Are you holding food in your mouth?"
Because he couldn't
And he shook
swallow.
his head no. Not because he was trying to hide it, because he didn't have that ability.
Right.
As we look back. It's nice to look back with 20/20 vision. Yeah. But he didn't have that ability to lie like that because of the dementia. He genuinely was like, "No, I'm not holding food in my mouth," and then he swallowed the food that was in his mouth. But so by the time he got his diagnosis, his swallowing was slow. I mean, he got the diagnosis, and within that same week to 10 days, I was grinding his food, feeding him only soft foods.
Yep, lots of yogurt.
By this time, 2 years ago, he was only eating baby food.
Yep.
And the occasional, he would have like ice cream or yogurt or, things like that. But anyway, these months are extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah, so...
And I'm finding myself, I don't know what the word is, being caught off guard.
Yeah.
With actual episodes of PTSD.
Yeah. I don't mean for you to cry. I'm sorry. I'll take over for a second, give you a chance to breathe. But I feel like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of expectations that people had for me when Dad passed away. And I've said this before, but not especially, but also in my mental health. Because they expected me to be, like, beyond depressed. Like, they expected me to completely hit rock bottom.
Yeah, and you and I have spoken about this, not in this podcast.
No,
I don't think.
Maybe a little bit in the first.
When we talked about grief. But,
yeah.
But by the time he passed away, we had been grieving. For so long.
So long, yeah.
And if there's anyone out there that listens to this that has a family member with frontotemporal dementia or ALS.
Or really any...
Our journey was only 17 and a half months.
Yeah. As opposed to
As
years.
opposed to 3 years, 5 years, 15 years, for some FTD patients, 20 years or more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
it was just that.
It was rapid compared to their experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, it's just one of those things that just completely catches you out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And we just grieved because we lost everything, every single thing you can imagine except for our own lives.
Yeah.
We barely held on to keeping you into college. Thank goodness for your uncle.
Yeah, I know.
And we had a roof over our heads because of your aunt and uncle, different aunt and uncle.
Right. We barely held on to our cell phones. Like, just modes of communication were becoming very slim.
Right. And we needed it because you were far away, and I felt like it was an important thing to try to hold on to. But we lost our home. We lost
car.
I lost my job while he was sick. I couldn't get another one because he needed someone to take care of him full time, and we didn't even know what was going on then.
No.
We lost a vehicle.
We lost two. We lost a motorcycle.
I lost my retirement, all of our savings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So I feel like...
And we lost him. We were losing pieces of him every 3 to 5 days at first.
Uh-huh.
Then every 2 to 3 days.
Yep.
Then every day.
Yep.
And then eventually we lost him completely.
Yeah.
And so when he passed away, I think that, that's when people really start descending upon you to support you in your grief experience. But what they didn't realize was that we had been grieving for so long, and you said to me, I feel like people expect me to be distraught.
Yeah.
Or crying really hard.
A lot of people were expecting me to be depressed.
Yeah.
And I can't say, well...
Oh, it was painful. Absolutely.
I explained this to, I think I explained this to my husband a few weeks ago. There's this one movie that I used to love, and now that I've gotten older, I don't like it as much. But do you remember the movie The Fault in Our Stars?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been a long time and I only saw it once, but yeah.
There's a scene in that movie where, if you don't know what it is, it's about a girl with cancer who falls in love with a boy with cancer, and then they go on a trip to Amsterdam because they both love the same author and all that stuff. But it's with Shailene Woodley, and I love her. But there is a scene in the movie where, spoiler alert, by the way, the boy that she falls in love with that has cancer dies from cancer. And the scene shows her getting ready for his funeral, like putting on her dress and her cardigan and stuff like that, and she's talking, and she's like, when I was in the hospital for like when I first got diagnosed with cancer and I was doing my first round of chemo, they would ask me every single time that I went in there my scale of pain from 1 to 10. And I would always tell them, if I was having a really bad time, I would always go up to a 9. And the nurses and the doctors would tell her, some people call it 10s, like it's the worst pain they've ever felt. But she said, I was saving my 10. So when her boyfriend died, that was, quote unquote, the great and terrible 10. Dad was the great and terrible 10 for me. So that it was the worst thing I'd ever felt. It still is. But I can't necessarily say that I was depressed, but I wasn't...
It's different.
I wasn't depressed like I had used to be.
No.
It was totally different.
It is. And
so I remember he passed away on the 31st. I was back on campus for college by September 10th-ish, I think.
Yeah.
And so...
But I remember you talking to me about this and me saying to you, we've been grieving for so long. I'm almost grieved out at this point.
Yeah. It's not that I felt like I didn't have any grief left to give.
We were sad.
Yeah. But it was just exhausting to stay that way, almost.
Not
if
only
we had
that,
done
but
it
the
for so long.
physical anticipation.
Yeah.
Watching him suffer. It was...
I feel like we've kind of shifted.
Yeah, like, I kept... It was like... It's like... I remember physically holding my breath. constantly, finding myself holding my breath.
Right. Excuse me.
But yeah, so we've shifted the topic a little bit because mental health does tie into the grief process.
Right.
But it's not but grieving is not a mental illness. Grieving is a normal function of life. It's like one of our overarching topics that we pursue repeatedly.
Yes.
Grieving is a normal function of life.
Yep.
But PTSD is not.
Yeah, that's not.
Right. And I had a bad episode last week.
Yeah.
Like so bad I actually had to call you.
Yep.
I needed someone to come.
And just sit with you. Yep.
Flashbacks. Body shaking.
Intrusive thoughts.
Completely obsessed with terror. Like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't necessarily. Well, I still have PTSD episodes, but I don't have them as to the extremes that I used to have them. But I will find myself usually, if I have a strong enough PTSD episode, I will talk to myself. That is like my number one cue as to I have gone too far.
Yeah.
So like, usually, oddly enough, they usually happen in the shower because that's when I'm the least distracted. And, like, excuse me, if I'm, like, doing work or I'm photographing something or I'm editing, like, they won't happen during then. But if I am not using my brain enough, sometimes they will just literally manifest out of thin air. And usually I have episodes surrounding real events, but like they're not necessarily memories, but they're visions of things that could have happened. That's why they're intrusive thoughts.
Oh, okay. No, I don't have that.
I have them a lot, actually. And I have like images and scenes pop into my head of how this thing could have gone, or what this person could have done, or what I could have done, and I dig and dig and dig and dig. And usually it takes like me trying to pull myself out of it, or my husband trying to pull me out of it by just putting me onto a different topic or something. But PTSD episodes are not a daily thing anymore.
Right.
As of recently, they kind of have been, though, because I have been in 2 car incidents within a month.
Right.
That was hard.
And when you already have PTSD, the trauma can a trauma can trigger it and cause the issue to resurface.
Right. And it's like, I feel like just in general, the last quarter of June into now has been really difficult because, like, not only, like, the 2 car incidents, but with the first car incident, like, my life was threatened. So I was like, this is awful.
Yeah.
And then with the second one, I literally got T-boned by a deer. Like,
a deer ran into you.
Yeah. Mine and my mom's car is actually currently being fixed for said
And
incident.
it's not so much about the deer, but the noise, the sound.
Yep. The amount of time that it took for things to literally go from 0 to 100 was too much. And
my recent episode, still don't know what triggered it.
Right. Because it doesn't. A lot of people tend to confuse, like, they tend to confuse things like panic attacks and PTSD episodes with thinking that they happen because of a reason. That's not always true. Sometimes that's part of the disorder, is sometimes it just happens.
I think it was, for me though, I think it was just more about an emotion. You know, like I was under a lot of stress, and
there's definitely triggers, but like,
and I'm just more susceptible at this time of year. I at this point in the year, I can go back and in my mind and look at the date and know exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
How much he drank that day, how much he ate that day, what medications he was taking, where we were. I mean, at this point, it is July 26th. We've got about 35 days, 36 until he's gone, because there's 31 days in July.
Right.
And it was just as intense as his illness was, the last few weeks of it were almost debilitating for me as a caregiver.
Yeah.
I was awake hours on end, constantly guessing.
Yeah.
It's not a condition where there's effective medications to treat any of the symptoms.
Right.
There's actually few to no options. It's pretty much just try to keep them from hurting themselves or other people.
Yeah, like falling down.
Yeah, try to keep them from choking to death. And we were broke. I couldn't, he was probably eligible for nursing care, but I could not have, by the time he got into a nursing home, he would have been gone anyway.
Right.
And there was just a lot of outside pressures going on as well. It was just an intense, you had a horrible situation with your future in-laws, and you were trying to finish an internship for school, and
I was bouncing back and forth. I've said this before, I was bouncing back and forth between Albany and Syracuse.
Yeah. And you didn't really have a good grasp on exactly how ill he was. Like when you left to go back to college, which was just days before he ended up in the physical hospital in the hospice wing, you said to me, I said to you, do you want to know when the end is coming? Because I wanted to know if you wanted to come back home from college, and you said yes, and I didn't even know what to say to you at that point. I actually said nothing. Yeah. Because all I could think was, you could be coming back here tomorrow.
Yeah. And it cut close. I was on campus for 4 days. Yeah. And then he passed away the day after I got there. Because I came back on the 30th. I had moved in on the 20, or no. Was it? No. I think I was there earlier.
Yeah, it was the week before.
Yeah, because I was there for orientation because I was part of their staff, but classes had started, and then I was home 4 days later.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is that, like, in year one, I knew that I was kind of reliving those experiences, but I was like, okay, well, it's year one.
Yeah, sure.
In year two, it hasn't been as intense, but what I'm finding is that I'm having these moments where I can't stop reliving the experience.
Yeah.
And Friday in particular was one of those days. I was trying to work, I was sewing. I was working on the hem of a dress, the same dress. Yeah. For approximately 3 hours before I called you. Yeah. And said, texted you.
You texted me, you're like, can you come here, please?
Can you come here, please? I need your help. And then I ended up, I think I texted your grandmother. She was at work. She was worried about me. Yeah. I didn't want to tell anyone because I didn't want them to be worried. But it was I couldn't function.
Yeah. I didn't really say anything because it happened. It kind of hit me in the face later in the day. I had a really crap day yesterday because yesterday was the 5-year anniversary of when a really close friend of mine from high school had died. And there was a memorial service for him yesterday because they had finally decided, he was cremated, but they finally decided to bury his ashes.
His mom had reached that point where she was capable of...
Yeah, he was 17 when he died. Yep. We're still, as far as I know, at the very least, I'm not sure what it's from. But I remember just, watching his mom's updates about, investigation for it and autopsies and things like that. And just, they came up with nothing.
Yeah, they don't have anything.
Yeah, so I...
Which I don't know what they call it in Ohio, but in New York State until, I don't know if it's 18 or 21, if they have a completely no explanation,
Right.
they'll actually call it SIDS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is sudden infant death syndrome.
Yeah.
But
I had a really bad day yesterday, and I couldn't really put my finger on it. I knew that it was the anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier in the day, I was like, okay, yeah, I don't feel great. That's fine. But as the day went on, the more I ignored it, the worse I felt.
Right.
Like, I wasn't, like, physically taking it out on my husband, but, like, I was being a jerk, and I didn't realize it.
Right.
And he kept asking me, he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I don't think so, but I don't really know what's going on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it took me, like, sitting on the floor of my kitchen, sobbing. And he was just like, what's going on? And I was like, I really think that it's because of, his name was Damien. I think it's because of Damien. Like, I think it's really bothering me that much, and I couldn't figure out how much it was until it put me to the ground.
Right.
So I remember having a lot of PTSD yesterday because the day that I found out that he had passed away was awful. I think you and Dad were at work or something, and I had woken up at, like, I don't know, noon, because I was 16 and exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten out of bed, I sat on the couch, I turned the TV on,
5 years ago, 6. So this was after. This was. This was.
It was 2016. Were you living with us?
6. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I was going in 2015.
Dad was.
It would have been the weekend though, right? Right? No. Or
I
was
don't-
I at work? I was probably at work.
I think you were at work. I can't remember what day of the week it was, but I know that you and Dad weren't there because you guys were out working.
Yeah, I was probably working at EBTH then.
And so.
And we both worked 50 miles from the house.
Yeah.
We bought the house because we loved it. We didn't care where it was.
Right.
We drove like 100 miles round trip just to get to work and home each day.
Yeah, because it was awesome. But the day that I found out, I didn't actually find out through anybody telling me, which was, number one, I was really angry about. Not because I'm a priority. That's not what it was. But I just hate having to have found out the way that I did.
Right.
Which was Facebook.
And you got misinformation because you found out that way.
And the person happened to be a girl. She didn't say in the post that he had died by suicide. She ended up, like, spreading it to other people in the school.
Right.
And it just happened to get back to me because my best friend still went to the same school. And so the day that I found out was on Facebook. It was on her Facebook. And
I remember you were reading the post to me and you were like, what? I don't understand what's going on. This is really upsetting.
Yeah, and because, like,
I think you called me at work.
Yeah, I think so too. But clearly, like, they had no idea what was going on. Nobody did. He just died, like, on the spot.
And she still doesn't know, which is horrible for a parent.
Yeah.
To not have those kinds of answers.
Yeah, and so, like, even up until, like, not even up until, but past the funeral, I was having an exhausting time. Because it wasn't a funeral necessarily, but at his wake, I got invited to go. And I carpooled with my best friend, and her dad drove us there. And I had a panic attack in front of the fucking casket. Because I didn't realize it was an open casket. I thought he had already been cremated, which wasn't true. So I got there, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And this is like only the second time that I had ever been to a wake. Because the first one was Graham.
Right.
This was my second, so I was not ready. Mm-hmm. Not that anybody ever would be. But
you went to Uncle Charlie's.
Did I?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I got there, and
we didn't go with you to this one.
No, this was the first one I had been to without you guys.
Yeah. And that's a different kind of experience when you're still a young person and you don't have, like, I'm not saying your best friend wasn't there, but it's just different when you have the family support,
Mm-hmm. And I had a panic attack while I was there so much that I started hyperventilating in front of the casket, and I passed out, and I needed to be carried to a chair. Because...
Good memories.
Oh, yeah, great. I was watching a friend that I had really, truly loved just not be there anymore.
Right.
And that... Just remembering that yesterday, especially because, I don't know, I feel like when it comes to intervals of years, people always emphasize, the 5-year and the 10-year and the 15-year marks because it's...
Just because they're nice round numbers.
Yeah. So, it was 5 years yesterday, and I couldn't figure out why I was being a jerk to my husband.
Right.
And it turns out it was because of mental illness. So... But yeah, my... panic attacks and PTSD episodes have changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I used to miss a ton of school because of panic attacks. Which, thankfully, you didn't, discourage it. Because you, there would be times I would have a panic attack in school and you were like, I know that you want to come home, but I need you to stay just to see it through.
Yeah.
And just let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when it finally got to the point where I literally couldn't do it anymore, you didn't force me into a situation to where I know it would just have gotten worse.
No, because I didn't value the education you were getting.
Right.
I thought your father and I were teaching you far more than you were learning in school.
Well, I learned a bunch while I was being homeschooled.
So, I didn't really worry about you missing school.
Yeah. So... at one point, I actually was considering getting my GED and not going back.
Yep.
But I wanted the social aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be able to have friends.
Yeah.
And even when I was homeschooled, I still ended up finishing early.
Yeah.
I probably went 3 months without having to do classwork because I was done. I did all my classes and I did all the work in a matter of from early January to the middle of March. I was done.
Yeah.
For my senior year, but still, it didn't really matter what happened. I was done either way. But
because mentally, the best place for you to be was not in that building.
Yeah.
And you did have friends in the town that we were living in.
Yeah. It was really funny too because they all ended up coming to my house.
Our house became the place.
Yeah. Friends would drive in from the next town over.
Yeah.
Or
come
2
in
towns
at 11
over.
o'clock at night.
It's Castaway.
Yeah. I want to go to Taco Bell. In Kentucky.
I know. Oh my God. One of my friends that lived down the street, he was like, are you awake? And I'm like, yeah, why? And he's like, well, one, he really liked riding in the Mustang.
Yeah.
But
your car.
Yeah, in my car. But he was like, you want to go to Taco Bell? And I'm like, I won't eat it, but I'll go with you. I'm not doing anything. So I come home at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to go get Taco Bell. People would just come to my place. It was hysterical. But everybody just really liked our house, too. So, anyway, tangent. But excuse me. I have been to, let's see, to kind of shift it a little bit, I have been to 3 different therapists. 2? Because counselors aren't the same thing.
No, but counseling is still mental health treatment.
Yeah, so I did the first one when I was 12. just turning 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't like them. I didn't think they were a good fit, so I switched.
Mm-hmm.
Are you rating my birthday? I'm gonna be 22. Woo. August 5th, guys. It's a big day.
Shout out on the gram.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I will be feeling 22
Well,
in
you were
9
in counseling,
days or 10 days.
At first because we were adopting.
Right.
Then, and that was more like a family sort of counseling.
Uh-huh.
Then you were in counseling because we had adopted, and it turned out to be just a horrifying nightmare.
Yeah.
Emma.
You're sitting really far away. It's having a hard time getting you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So that, and then
after that,
and then the person that we adopted had become violent and really dangerous. And that's when things really got bad for all of us.
Yeah. So I started with one therapist for that reason, but I switched to another because I didn't like the first one.
You were getting counseling in school.
I was getting counseling in school. I was getting group DBT therapy.
You were getting individual therapy.
And then after we moved, I started equine therapy. And then I did that up until I left for college. And then when I was in college, I did counseling through the college.
Right. Mainly, you were there. You met with the counselor on and off, but really after when Dad started getting sick, even before we had his diagnosis.
I went once a week.
You were seeing
for
a counselor.
A year straight almost.
Yeah.
And
now we're struggling with trying to secure counseling services.
Yeah, for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
One
of them is health insurance.
One of them is health insurance. The other is that so many people are booked up because of the pandemic. There's a lot of people that needed mental health resources, and lucky for them, they could get them when they needed it. But because of that number of people, there's not a ton of availability.
There's not a ton of availability, and again, because of the type of insurance we have, there's just not a lot of people that take Medicaid.
We have a limited resource.
Yes, we have a very limited resource. It's not like you can just... There are mental health services out there, but
yeah,
they're expensive, and people with no income can't pay for those things.
Yeah.
So.
But I personally really, really like having a therapist or a counselor.
Yeah.
Not just because, well, there's a number of reasons that I really like it, but it makes me feel secure knowing that I can go to a person who's totally third party.
Yeah.
And just...
And confidential.
Yeah. And just, I don't know, I don't do it to be a jerk, but I like picking people's brain. I like being able to figure out, like, how people feel and what they think about certain things.
Right.
I need someone to do that to me. I kind of, it really helps my anxiety because it helps me figure out myself more.
Right.
And I know a ton of people, I'm friends with a lot of people who are really nervous about having a counselor or don't want to go to one or things like that, which is fine. They can go when they're ready, or they can just not go at all. Maybe it's not for them. I know what you think about that, but...
About what?
Well, you've known a few people, or you've known a few of my friends that specifically are, like, nervous about counseling and don't want to do it. But you and I are kind of both team therapies for everybody, so...
It's like having a doctor.
Yeah.
You know?
But that scares a lot of people because I've noticed the common theme.
That's because of the negative attention that is given to mental health, although people keep trying to normalize it. And
there's always someone.
Yeah. I think there's still that aspect that someone's going to think there's something...
quote unquote
broken.
Yeah, quote unquote wrong, quote unquote broken.
And they don't want that label, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
It's not because once you get certain labels,
Yeah.
it's hard to get rid of them.
Yeah, like even...
Or once you get certain labels, then you're constantly working to educate people on what the label actually is.
Right.
And that it doesn't mean that you can't function as a human in the world.
Like even up until pretty recently, someone really close to me was super nervous about going to a counselor or a therapist because of the environment that they had grown up in was super negative about mental health and counseling and things like that. But up until like
very recently.
Probably within the last 6 months, honestly.
I would say even less than that, but yeah.
This person was like, yeah, I'd be open to it. I'd like to try it sometime. And so that was cool. But I still know a good number of people who they all usually say the same thing is, I don't want to go see a counselor or a therapist because I don't want them to tell me what's wrong with me. And I'm like, first of all, that's not what they do. That doesn't make sense.
That's not how this works at all.
No.
So let's just make that clear.
Yeah. And I think it's easier for people in my age group to feel comfortable with counseling or therapy because of just the difference in the change of the stigmatism around it. I feel like a lot of it is being driven by, like, obviously, like, lots of different people from different generations, but more specifically, like, younger millennials into older Gen Z. I see a lot of mental health advocates in that area of age. Like, that's where I see the most, almost. Excuse me. So I think that's why I feel like it's easier for me to see people my age be open to doing it as, like, more so than people outside of that age group. Is that weird to say?
I think that in my generation, it became more common for people to seek counseling or therapy in one aspect or another. And if you look back on TV shows and movies of the late 1970s and into the 80s and early 90s, you will see references to being in therapy. Typically they're negative. Yeah. But they are there. It's a common theme because it was becoming much more common. Right. So I think I'm on that generation that's on the crux of it becoming more spoken about. Yeah. But not necessarily more accepted. I think the acceptance is when we're moving into, like when I was in college in the 90s. Yeah. I think that's where we really start to see that growth. Yeah. And then of course into the new millennium where people are really more outspoken about it. And it needs to be people like us. It needs to be people who deal with mental health issues on a regular basis. Yeah. And being out there in the world. Yeah. You know, being who you are, your regular everyday self. Yeah. But still having, you know, if you have issues, you're able to talk about it. You're able to explain it to other people if they ask questions. And if people are being rude, you're able to put them in their place, basically. Yeah. It doesn't happen, I don't think, as much anymore. I think because people know that it's not politically correct. It's not socially acceptable to be obnoxious to people that are having mental health issues. Right. Although there is still a misconception among many people that it's something that can be controlled. Yeah. And I can tell you that my PTSD episode last Friday, I wanted so badly to control it. And I had to live through it. Yeah. And get to the other side before I could start using techniques. I can say to get myself more under control and away from the episode. I can say that about just about every single panic attack I've ever had. Of I want to be able to control it, but at this very moment in time, for the love of God, I cannot. It usually takes outside factors or outside influences to kind of get me out of the hole that I dig for myself. But you're allowed to have that experience and go through it without having someone judge you as being incapable, weak.
Yeah.
Some people even
stupid.
Use the S word.
Sorry.
There's still the misconceptions that are out there, and it's something that we're constantly going to fight with. It's also cultural. There are just some cultures that it's so deeply ingrained to not accept those kind of things. Yeah. Although there are some cultures where it's also deeply ingrained to accept them, but they don't refer to them as mental health issues. That person is seen as special. Yeah. Unique. Yeah. Maybe it's viewed as that person having some sort of insight. Yeah. That others don't have. Right. But just like there are, to briefly touch on something that I spoke about earlier, there are cultures where frontotemporal dementia, or even dementia in general, is not diagnosed because it's not culturally acceptable. Right. That's not how you deal with it.
I hate that term.
But it's and that's when it comes to culture. Yeah. And talking about mental health and dealing with mental health is very ingrained in culture. How it's discussed, how it's dealt with, is a cultural thing. You can't legislate culture. No. You can't dictate culture. You can only continue to work on it and hope to change it progressively over time. There's no magical change for culture. So, I saw the things I saw in my generation. You see the things you see in your generation. Yeah. Hopefully by the time your kids get to be your age, it'll be an even different view and hopefully a more positive I really hope that's. And maybe we won't see certain things as mental illness. Because
there's things.
I mean, it used to be considered, being a homosexual used to be labeled as a mental illness.
Women with PMS or
what was labeled as a mental illness. The word hysteria and the word hysterectomy are tied to each other for a horrifying reason. So hopefully we'll continue to see more positive development and change over time. But the only way that we get to see that is by continuously talking about it and being open about it and being direct. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to be direct.
Yeah, don't be afraid to be direct. Make eye contact.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Freak out your math teacher. Go ahead. Sorry. Oh my God. I still remember her name too. It's like a nightmare.
So I think that, things will continue to move forward. It's very hard right now in this environment that we see in the world because there's a lot of struggle going on. The pandemic separated us physically from each other and yet linked us electronically, but still electronic connections, unless you're actually speaking to someone and you can see them if you're a person with sight, and you can hear them if you're a person with hearing, like both of those things at the same time. Nuances are lost. Yeah. And social media, although it's a great connector and a great way to share information, it's also a horrifying way to communicate with people. Yeah. Especially, I know TikToks are hugely popular and but they can also be extraordinarily dangerous. It's bad to get your news from social media.
Yeah, I know.
But we'll continue to move forward, hopefully, in spite of the fact that we're struggling with communicating with each other and understanding what is real versus what is true. Yeah. And understanding science. Yeah. And because mental health is deeply tied to scientific research. Yep. And being able to understand and be more tolerant.
Yeah, which is not
of each other.
That's not something I see a ton of
at the moment. Yeah, we're as a society, we're struggling with that, and not just Americans. People want to say America this, America that, but humans, around the globe, are having all of these similar struggles they're just manifesting themselves just a little bit differently wherever you go, but there's an overarching theme.
Yeah, I know.
So we just need to keep talking to each other.
And don't, I
think that's why podcasts have become so popular.
Yeah, because people like being able to hear not only what other people have to say,
but when you hear it, there's tone.
Yeah.
There's
more information.
Yeah, you can pick up the communication better.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I work so hard on the subtitles or the captions rather when I can sit down and work on the captioning. I really heavily, even though they're auto-generated, I really heavily edit them and try to make them with the same tempo as the words that are being spoken. I use ellipses a lot and parentheses, so that someone who can't hear but wants to read the podcast is going to capture as much of the meaning as we're trying to get across.
Right.
I want it to be accessible.
Yeah.
To a variety of different people.
Yeah. Because,
communication is key.
Communication is key, yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of things. Relationships. And life, yeah.
Politics, medicine,
jobs,
mental health.
Yeah.
That was a good talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any closing thoughts about what we've said? I know you I don't remember
I just made all the closing thoughts.
No, I was about to say, I don't remember what episode we're on, but naturally, you make all the closing thoughts every single episode. You always have, the overarching theme, wrapped up nicely with a little bow on it and stuff, because you just know how to say it.
Okay. Is that okay?
No, that's good. That's
all right.
That's why I always ask. I'm like, is there anything else that you...
That's my job. My job is to be the synthesizer.
Yeah,
But to be clear and not too emotional about it, just to share the information.
Yeah, which is
That's
good.
Kind of how I've gotten through life.
Yeah, which is good because you've said it before, I'm like Dad. I am much more emotion mind than, not necessarily you are, but...
And he also suffered from paralyzing anxiety and panic attacks as well.
Yeah.
And depression.
Yeah.
Throughout his life. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surrounded by people who have mental illnesses. And I don't know.
I'd like to get rid of that stigma. I'd like to get rid of anxiety and panic attacks for the most part as a mental illness, because I think it's just certain people's way of dealing with things. And we need to be more open to all of those different ways that people deal with things.
I also don't want people to see mental illnesses as negatives, because in some ways I've kind of learned how to use my anxiety as a superpower.
Right.
Because it is my way of assessing a situation and knowing if it's dangerous or not. It is my way of, being able to differentiate if someone is lying to me. Oh, my radar is so good because of my anxiety. Seriously.
Yeah, your dad was very, very good at it. So.
Yeah. In my head, just about everybody is a poor liar, because I will unintentionally assess and analyze you until I figure out whether you're telling me the truth or not.
Sounds frightening.
Yeah, it is. It's weird.
All right, so is that our closing?
Yeah, I guess so.
Lots of people are lying.
Lots of people are lying.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Mental health should not be a scary thing.
No. And hopefully we'll find more normalizations within these things that are labeled as mental health issues.
Therapy is good.
Being
on medication for said mental health or mental illnesses
perfectly fine
is fine.
You need it. Yeah, and if you need it, make sure you take it every day, and that it's part of a total regimen that includes all the other things, whether that's meditation or exercise
or even
aromatherapy.
Yeah. Or I even kind of going back to therapy, making art is a great form of
art
meditation.
therapy is fantastic. Music therapy.
Yeah. But yeah, like when I say medication, I don't necessarily mean drugs. I mean,
well, there's a whole range of options available, whether you're using edibles or CBD oil, or whether you're on a prescription antidepressant.
Sure, there's a whole plethora.
An actual, anti-anxiety pill that you just take when you have one of these severe episodes. It could be any number of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say it again, but I know it's totally irrelevant. Don't be afraid to freak out your math teacher. Be direct with people. It is not your fault if people don't like who you are because of your mental health.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No, it has nothing to do with you.
Because I've run into that.
Yeah, it has absolutely nothing to do with you.
And
it's all about them.
Tough luck on them. That's their problem.
Yeah.
And I think with that being said...
See, and you do that every episode.
Yeah! We're a team, Mom.
This has been another episode of Under the Sun and Moon podcast with Kes and Michelle.
Yeah.
Or Michelle and Kes.
I don't know. It's been great. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.